it's got this harmonica musical score. Like
Do you
when
not like
something's
those?
supposed to be funny that maybe isn't that funny, like suddenly the harmonica comes in.
Max Oliver Goldblatt is an American actor, writer, and director. He graduated from Wesleyan University in 2005. He is the son of American cinema editor Mark Goldblatt. Max is writer, editor, and director of 2005's critically acclaimed short film Kinetoscope, a twisted horror fantasy. Max Goldblatt is noted for his role of Philip Rubinoff in the 1995 film Heavyweights, about the adventures of teenagers attending an American fat camp.
Let's welcome our new friend, our guest, Max Goldblatt. Thank you for coming today, Max.
Good to be here.
It's very nice to meet you. I'm going to start with a question that may or not be controversial. I hope this is okay. And we can cut it if need be. But according to your IMDb and your Wikipedia page, you worked in a Renaissance fair as a blacksmith. True or false?
I hate to, burst.
Oh no! Does the
I
internet
hate to
lie?
burst the fantasy.
Oh,
I will tell you that has been on my Wikipedia and IMDb since I was pretty young.
Wow!
I didn't put it there, but I've always found it very funny. I've
It's
never
incredible.
been to a Renaissance fair.
You've
never been?
No.
That's even better.
Who is
Although
this person?
an Uber driver the other night, an Uber driver was telling me how great Renaissance fairs were, and I was like, okay.
Everyone always talks about how great they are. I think if you have to hype them, they're
Yeah.
probably not that great.
If you want a giant
Right.
turkey leg and to
Right.
dress up for, in your Renaissance
Yeah.
garb, go for it. You can do that
I
at
think
home.
you can get the turkey leg at Costco.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Costco can fulfill all
which
your
is the
needs.
better place to get it from, I think.
So rumors have been
So no.
dispelled.
Yeah, I am not,
Damn it.
and I never have been a blacksmith at a Renaissance fair.
Well, that takes care of my next 8 questions. So, all right.
Well,
Maybe we don't have much of an interview
It's a very
left.
short episode.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Very
thanks for
short.
joining us.
appreciate your
Yeah.
time.
Have a great night.
In our podcast, we review movies from the 90s and 80s and, before that. And one of the dark horses, one of the ones that admittedly I thought was going to be so much more problematic than it was, you starred in Heavyweights. And may I say, it ended up being one of my favorite rewatches because I went in thinking, oh no, there's no way this one holds up. And it holds up so well.
It's incredible.
It's so good.
Yeah, it is an enduring favorite, and I think dark horse is a good word for it because it wasn't a huge success when it came out.
No.
It's not a movie that people are clamoring for a sequel for, or a reboot, let's say.
Be careful.
It's
Disney's
Yeah.
always looking for more.
look, I think that would be great. I think that would be fantastic. But the people who love Heavyweights really love Heavyweights. And
Yes.
it's cool to have been a part of something that endured and was maybe in the moment at its time a little like a smart movie for kids, something
Yes.
that's operating on maybe a different level.
It's one of those ones where by title and framing and everything, you'd think, oh, here's another one of these. Like, you think you know what you're getting going in, and it's so much more wholesome and heartfelt and like funny, like laughing out loud throughout so much of the movie.
Yeah, totally. I rewatched the other night the other of the kind of big movies I was in when I was a kid, called Bushwhacked,
Yeah.
and I hadn't seen it in decades. Well, I'm much more familiar with Heavyweights, but I was like, if we're gonna talk about this stuff, I gotta watch Bushwhacked, and I watched it last night. My wife lasted maybe a half hour. She had never
Really?
I mean, she was tired. It was a lot, but
That's fair.
it's late. We'd already, whatever.
Yeah.
But that has no bearing on the film itself. But I watched it with a bit of a critical eye, and I couldn't help but measure it against Heavyweights, just in its intelligence and watchability and the sense of humor. And it no shade to the makers of Bushwhack or fans of Bushwhack.
Yeah.
But it didn't hold a candle. It was no Heavyweights.
Can I ask, do you have your own copy? Because I tried to look on Disney Plus,
Yeah, we could not
the
find
library.
it.
Like I was desperately trying to find a copy of Bushwhack. Yeah.
I'll tell you, literally, this is my copy of Bushwhack.
Oh, that's
is that like a screener? Do you have just your own special one?
It's a commercial DVD, but either I lost the case or my memory's not great, or I like bought it on eBay without the case.
Yes. Yeah, I was so bummed because it said online like Bushwhacked available on Disney Plus, and then I pulled up Disney Plus like not available in your region. I was like, "What? Tell me the region."
Right.
Yeah, it's a Fox movie, and Disney bought
see.
Fox, and a number of Fox films have been getting added to Disney Plus, but not all of them. And clearly, anyone who wants to see Bushwhacked, I suggest writing to Disney Plus, right, and saying put Bushwhacked on there.
Yeah, please.
I mean, he sent me the trailer. And because I couldn't remember at first if I'd seen it or not. And as soon as I saw the trailer, right away, I'm like, yes, I've definitely seen this. I remember that scene. But Heavyweights for me, I feel like it has such a cult following. Like, to me, it's like the movie equivalent of Freaks and Geeks, where like in the moment, people weren't as aware of how good it was. And then later on, it just exploded. So did you feel that later on? Like, do you feel like people fully appreciate it now? Is that something that you're really proud of, or like that resonates with you a ton now?
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. And, Freaks and Geeks happens to also have a couple of the same creative people involved, right? And Paul Feig, the creator of Freaks and Geeks, played Tim, the counselor in Heavyweights.
So good.
And Judd Apatow, obviously. But yeah, I think that's a good parallel, and I do feel that way. I remember when it came out, being a like 11-year-old, and getting a group of friends together to go opening weekend to go see it at the local theater, and like it being fun, but also being aware that it wasn't like Home Alone or something. It wasn't like everyone was talking about it, and it wasn't like anyone was recognizing me on the street. I think it happened like once or twice in my youth.
Yeah.
And I like kind of didn't believe it. It was like, did someone put you up to this? But yeah, over time, it has its fans. There's meme accounts. There's, you see bootleg Perkis System t-shirts and sweatshirts.
We're responsible for one. We have one that's branded for the podcast. Yep.
There you go. So yeah, and I am very proud to have been involved in it. I mean, obviously it's decades later, and I cellularly and intellectually am a completely different person, right? I'm not a child anymore. But so I can look back on it with a lot of great memories, and also a sort of dreamlike, out of body, like, I guess I was involved in this thing.
Right.
I think I also subjectively can be like, that's good and that's cool.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'll always be proud of it.
So I say we'll rewind it from the beginning. So how did you get into acting in general? Like, what kicked it off? What got it going for you?
So my dad was a film editor I mean, he a fantastic film editor, edited a lot of movies that are beloved, things like Terminator, Terminator 2,
wow,
True Lies.
Never heard of those movies.
Yeah. No,
I'll check them out.
Starship Troopers.
Oh my
God.
Showgirls. Like,
he's a legend.
The classics.
Yeah, right? Your faves. And other stuff too, like Commando.
Wow. A lot of Arnold. Doing a lot of Arnold.
He worked with Arnold a lot. He worked on Tombstone.
Oh my God. Wow. That is one of my all-time favorites.
Wow.
Incredible.
Yeah, so I grew up like as a kid, visit your dad at workday or whatever.
Yeah.
Or like it's summer break. And I would go into the editing room with him. And this was back when they were cutting on film on flatbed desks with the reel-to-reel film. And I remember just absorbing a lot as a little kid, and also you're getting a film education from someone who works in film. And so he's showing me cool movies and showing me stuff when I was really young that I probably shouldn't have been seeing.
Sure.
Showgirls specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I remember going into the Showgirls editing room, and that movie was NC-17, and I was
Right.
definitely like a few years younger than 17. So so film was just exciting to me, and then by virtue of that, you start thinking about actors and acting. And
Yeah.
growing up in Los Angeles, obviously the industry doesn't feel like a faraway thing. It's like something that you have access to, or you are aware of. And like I grew up going to school with like the children of actors and
Sure.
agents and stuff like that. So you're aware of it. And then, for me, it was like I was doing school plays and like little acting classes, like a summer camp that I went to called Kids on Stage,
Excellent.
and,
Nice.
stuff like that. And then, I was a bit of a ham. I was a hammy little kid, which you can see on display in my early work. And yeah, one thing led to another. And I think I told my parents, like, I want an agent. And they were like, no, no. Like, I didn't know the name Corey Feldman, but like, I think that's the fear, right? Is like you're
Sure.
going to have your youth destroyed, or
Yeah.
stunted, or accelerated
Yeah.
adulthood, or whatever. I mean, so my parents were very protective over that, but I think they were like, if you're committed to this and you want to try it, like, let's talk to an agent, see if they think you have like the talent or the metal to like do this. And so I got a little agent who a little agent. I got an agent who represented little children. I started going on auditions, and you go to a lot of the like cattle calls, they
Sure.
call them, where it's like a commercial, and there's like
Hundreds.
50 fat kids waiting in the lobby with you, and you're like,
Cool.
but I'm special. Yeah, I auditioned for a lot of things that I didn't get. I auditioned for the role of the brother in Matilda. And
Dip face.
what was cool about that was I got called back to meet with Danny DeVito. And at the
Awesome.
time, his office on the Sony lot was in a soundstage, a big soundstage that he had like a sort of built little office set within a soundstage with he had some of his own personal memorabilia and artifacts, like some penguin stuff
That's
from Batman
incredible.
Returns was there. And yeah, it was a unique kind of audition to go into a soundstage. I auditioned to play Neil on Freaks and Geeks.
Okay.
I thought, because I had been in Heavyweights, that I had
Yeah, like an in.
yeah, but I didn't get the role.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Freaks and Geeks.
Yeah.
I've tried out and maybe got a call back for the role of the young version of Jason Patrick in the drama Sleepers.
Oh.
Mm.
Yes.
Where Kevin Bacon plays a not good priest who does
Right.
not good things. I read the book Sleepers in order to like prepare for the audition, and it was heavy. Obviously, it was probably too heavy for whatever age I was.
Yeah.
Oh, this is good. Early on, I auditioned for, and this was a cattle call. I auditioned to play one of the kids oogling Cindy Crawford in the famous Pepsi commercial.
Wow. That's great.
Did not get that role. And then a big one that I think would have changed my life. I auditioned for the main role in Free Willy.
Come on.
Which we did on the podcast.
We did, yeah.
I did.
Wow.
I got a couple little roles here and there. I think my first TV or film role was a single episode of a totally forgotten sitcom called The Good Life.
Okay.
Which starred a stand-up comedian named John Caponera.
That name does sound familiar.
Huh.
But the buddy on the show, let's say the George Costanza of the show, was Drew Carey.
Wow.
He was an up and coming stand-up, less up and coming than the guy who was starring in the show that lasted for one season. But I had a small role in one episode of this show, and pretty quickly after that, I ended up auditioning for Heavyweights and getting the role in Heavyweights. And I would call Heavyweights my big break.
Yeah.
Really. I remember going into the audition, or I remember hearing about like, oh, it's this project called Heavyweights, and it's like a fat camp, and it's a really cool project, and it sounded really exciting to me. And I went for the audition, and then I got called back, which sometimes happens, and that was exciting. And then they did the final round of that basically was screen tests, where they would film different combinations of different kids acting with each other. They'd be like, all right, for the role of Jerry, you come in and you're going to do the role of Sam this time. So
Okay.
there were like one or two scenes, and you kind of had to know, or I don't know, maybe you had an idea if you were only going to be reading for like these two characters, so you need to know both of their lines or whatever. And there was a waiting room, a big kind of waiting room with a bunch of fat kids and their parents, and different kids would be leaving. You'd be like, oh, and I mean, they're kids, too. It was like Danny Tamborello from Pete and Pete.
Right.
He was in there. He ended up not being cast in Heavyweights, but you're sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, there's little Pete.
Yeah.
Like,
Sure.
of course they're going to cast him, not me, an unknown. And then you find yourself doing the scene with like Patrick Renna from The Sandlot and from The Big Green. Like, he auditioned for it too. He didn't get it, and you do it and you're like, oh, he's totally going to get cast as Josh. He was so funny, and then he's not. But over the course of a day, they do these different combinations of kids and they film it on film, on 35 millimeter film, like no expense spared.
Right.
Disney.
Right.
And then however many days later, it was like, okay, you got cast as Philip, and you're gonna get flown out to like North Carolina in however many weeks or months, and tell your school that you're going to be gone for a few months.
That's awesome. And I guess that was one of our questions too that we had, is like, what was your parents' thought? Like you said, they were kind of hesitant for you to get an agent. So you're like, hey, so I'm going to be a fat kid in this movie. Like, was there a negative connotation with it? Or were you just like, this is a chance for me to be in a movie? What was your thought process?
If there was, it was probably a conversation between my parents that I wasn't a part of. I think it was kind of just like, they read the script. They, approved, right?
Okay.
They deemed it not too whatever, I think if it had been a film that like needled more the fatness, like,
right,
maybe I think one contemporary critique of Heavyweights is that it doesn't necessarily address obesity head on. Like maybe if they were to remake it, it would delve more into that in a dramatic way.
Sure.
There's some of it, right?
Yeah.
But and I know people who grew up overweight who saw the film as something of a beacon or something that they held on to, but it didn't go too far in either direction. It kind of plays it safe. It doesn't go too mean in the humor, and it also doesn't really address it. And I know you guys being Midwesterners,
sure,
are Siskel and Ebert heads, and I know you.
We have a relationship.
I have a very strong opinion about them.
Yeah, no, I know. And that was I actually looked the other day at their review from the show of Heavyweights. They felt it didn't go far enough in terms of addressing the issue of obesity, which, whatever, that wouldn't make it a better movie, just a different movie.
I mean, we actually gave it credit that because we were fearful, comedy, we have talked about, ages historically not great. And especially 90s comedies, you could see this going off the rails really quickly. But we were really impressed with how they towed the line, and maybe even like it was subdued, that it didn't seem to poke fun. It was like almost making fun of the adults or people that were unhappy with it. Like the little league game between like the heavyweight kids and the sports camp, how big of jerks they were and how they kind of got the revenge and everything. Like, we were impressed with how well it aged, because that does not happen often. And we reviewed some movies that have, like Ladybugs, for instance, with Rodney Dangerfield. There are some really unfortunate jokes that just never land. And I can't believe they did then. Yeah. But this was not the case. Heavyweights is just like so solid on so many levels and doesn't go too far into poking fun of anyone.
Yeah. And there's no cross-dressing in Heavyweights, which I think that's a can of worms.
That's the bar. That's it. It's just don't do that.
No, it's true. I mean, there's a line in the movie, right, which is like, when you're here, you're not the fat kid. Everyone's the fat kid. And that, they kind of leave it at that, right? Like, beyond that, we're just here to have a good time.
Yeah,
the summer of our lives. And it's more poking fun at like like infomercial,
Right.
self-help, like,
Yeah.
Anthony Robbins sort of
Yes.
people that,
Yeah.
and then the fat kids, which is smart, and Judd Apatow wrote the movie when he was like, I think he was like 24 when we were making
Of
the
course
movie,
he was.
incredibly young,
Yeah.
Crazy.
incredibly young, but he had already worked on the Larry Sanders Show at that point.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, crazy career, obviously, that guy.
But even like Paul Feig's character too, like how they're kind of making fun of him for losing weight. Like
Right.
Yeah.
they almost are like, well,
They
you're the
flip it,
weird one
yeah.
now. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, right, totally, totally. And I mean, have you seen pictures of what Aaron Schwartz, who played Jerry Garner, looks like now?
Yeah, he's ripped as hell.
Yeah, that's how I would describe it as well. I mean, I thought it would be interesting if you did a remake or reboot sort of thing,
Yeah.
like they have these legacy reboots, like the Ghostbusters movies, where
Right.
We were just
you
talking
have a
about that today.
new bunch of kids, but you've also got like some of the OGs, right?
Yes.
And I thought it would be, one way to do it would be to have some of the former
Yeah.
counselors or former, campers as counselors now.
Yeah,
and
that'd
you've
be
got him
awesome.
Rip.
perfect.
Oh, stop it.
Yeah.
We're in. We're in already. Make it happen.
Get Kenan Thompson in there. I mean,
Right.
It's a hit.
I would participate if I were asked.
Yeah.
I don't know. But that's what I would do.
So do you have a distinct memory of like your parents getting the call, you getting the call of like you got the part? Like, is there anything etched in your head of that?
Yeah, I don't think it's a story, but I remember like being in the kitchen and
Yeah.
the call came in on the landline. And, we were celebratory,
Yeah.
and it was, and it felt a lot different than like you're gonna go work on this sitcom for a week,
Right.
or like I had done like one play in Los Angeles in like still a small theater, but it was like not a school play. I was the only kid in it. It was adults and me.
Yeah.
And so it obviously felt like a big step up from that play and that sitcom. It was the next actual acting job that I got, and knew that it would be a time commitment of a handful of months, and would have to kind of clear it with my elementary school and all that stuff. I mean, I was in 5th grade, so
Yeah.
and there was an amazing set teacher on Heavyweights, this woman named Lois Yarashevsky, who had also worked on the Mighty Ducks films, and so those
Yeah.
kids knew her, and she like really took care of everyone. And I don't know like how much learning was really going on,
Right.
but at least like they're like looking out for your welfare, and you're not working more than you are supposed to, and you're in the classroom the amount of time that you're supposed to be. But it was funny too, because I was like in 5th grade, and some of the kids were like older teens, like
Okay.
I think Keenan was like maybe 16, and then Sean Weiss Goldberg, the goalie,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
was the oldest kid. He was like 16 or 17.
Wow.
We all lived in a Holiday Inn, a massive Holiday Inn in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And there was like in the lobby there was like a little 1 to 3 hole little putt thing, and there was a big pool, and there was a restaurant, and there was a sauna, and there were video games, and a little like 2-game arcade or something.
Yeah.
So there was all sorts of activity. There was some little like conference room that we would all rehearse in. Like
Okay.
Oh.
the first like weeks, or I don't know how long, week of being there, we kind of like rehearsed some of the bigger scenes, and almost everyone who was working on the film and acting in the film was staying there, with the exception of a couple people. And so it was like a real clubhouse. And on days that you might not be shooting, or weekends or whatever, it was like a kids party. And so some kids were a little older and were up to no good, and were sneaking off and doing whatever.
Sneaking candy? Where were they?
Yeah, exactly. They were sneaking candy and sneaking into the pool.
Right.
Yeah. Do you the one thing that comes to mind is like you said, the cattle calls are all these like actors that you're seeing that you know of, that you've either been in auditions with, or you just know of from what they've worked in. Do you have any sense of like, or a memory of you showing up and seeing the people who got the parts, and you're like, is it intimidating, or you're like, well, I'm one of them, like this is, like I'm part of the gang already?
I mean, I think before Heavyweights, I obviously was intimidated by such things. And yeah, as I mentioned, like seeing those other fat kids of note at the Heavyweights callback, I was like,
Yeah.
forget it.
Yeah.
but I got it, and it makes sense as a casting director. You want a couple kids who people know and a couple fresh new talents,
Yeah.
right? Who
Yeah.
might be good. And but after Heavyweights, I definitely felt after it came out, I felt more, confident going into auditions, and
Yeah.
especially like, they look at your resume, and your resume isn't just like plays at my elementary school or whatever, one episode of a sitcom. It's like Heavyweights, Disney,
That's big.
produced by Judd Apatow or whatever.
Right.
So, and Bushwhacked came pretty quickly after that. I was in sixth grade for Bushwhacked. I missed the like beginning of my sixth grade year, and then in seventh grade, I did a little scene movie that maybe went direct to video in the US, I think, called Three Blind Mice. No, I'm sorry. It was called Three Blind Mice, but they changed the title to Sticks and Stones.
Okay.
It's like not good. But my father in the film was played by Gary Busey.
Wow. Tell me there's a copy of that somewhere. That's incredible.
That was a trip. Actually, if you look on YouTube, it might not be there, but some years ago, a friend of mine found on YouTube a bootleg of the entire film dubbed into Russian.
Oh, wow.
Gary Busey in Russian, I would pay to see.
Yeah. But it was one guy doing all of the voices in a monotone.
Oh, my God.
Like that was his YouTube channel, was like, I'm going to dub
I got you.
random movies that no one cares
He's doing
about.
God's work. He's doing God's work.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a crazy cast. It was Kirstie Alley played the mom of the main character. It was basically like three tight-knit friends in high school, who love baseball, who are dealing with a bully, and it escalates.
Okay.
And the main kid was this actor named Justin, I'm forgetting his last name. He was like a secondary sort of character in the American Pie movies.
Oh, okay.
And then it was Chauncey Leopardi who played Squints in Sandlot.
Wow.
And then it was me. Those were the three blind mice. We were the three kids. And then the bully was this blonde, kind of handsome, like young heartthrobby guy named Jordan Brower, who was one of the kids in The Big Green.
Okay.
And then the older brother of the main character was Mark Paul Gosselaar.
Come on.
I mean, it was on paper, this is a sure thing, right?
Yeah.
The mom was Kirstie Alley.
Right.
My dad
Slam
was
dunk.
Gary Busey. And then after that, it's like, okay, I was in seventh grade. I had recently been bar mitzvahed. And, it was kind of like, you're entering an awkward phase. You're going through puberty. You're not really a leading man. Would go out on more auditions, wasn't getting things.
Yeah.
Like tried out for Freaks and Geeks.
Okay.
Didn't get it. Tried out for the role of Pacey on Dawson's Creek.
Wow.
Didn't get that, obviously. I think when they were initially casting that show, they were casting a touch younger than they ended up actually going with. They were seeing lots of kids. And so at some point, someone thought maybe I could play Pacey. Didn't happen. Tried out for Rushmore, didn't get that. Every kid tried out.
Oh my God.
Rushmore.
But I got a call back and had a call back with Wes Anderson, which was really cool.
Yeah.
This was early on in Rushmore. I think they even announced it. It was supposed to be Harvey Keitel in the Bill Murray role.
Really?
Oh.
I didn't know that.
And I don't know exactly why the shift happened, but it's interesting to see Harvey Keitel later in some Wes Anderson stuff.
Yeah.
But I didn't get the role. And then at a certain point, you're like, okay, it's a lot of effort doing the kid actor thing and going to the auditions, and like, for the parents especially,
Right.
like, schlepping you to the auditions, right? Or running lines with you. Receiving the faxes of the script pages, So at a certain point, I don't know if it was a conversation, but it was kind of like, I think I'm just going to focus on school,
Yeah.
And I did a couple other small roles here and there. And then at a certain point, it's like, all right, I'm going to go to college and I'll do theater there. And when I graduated from college, I wasn't like, I'm going to move back to LA and take improv classes and try to be a working actor. It was not my interest anymore, really.
Sure.
That's the rise and fall of it. But basically, I peaked at Heavyweights, gentlemen.
But I mean, what an
That's a hell of
experience
a peak,
too
too.
for you to have that. Like I think that's like 95% of our questions too are like your experience on the set. It sounded like you were there at the camp for 2 months. I didn't know you guys were in a Holiday Inn. I just kind of assumed you were like on the grounds, like in bunk beds. Obviously,
Right?
that's
Yeah.
not the case. But were you like starstruck by, because you have like Ben and Jerry Stiller? I mean, there's got to be actors like I know you're referencing them now, but at the time, did you know who some of these kids were, or were they not really big?
Yeah, I mean, the kids who had been in Mighty Ducks were definitely like the the
Like
the
top tier.
cool kids, or
Yeah.
when I learned that they were going to be in it, it was like, oh shit, awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't learn that Ben Stiller was going to play Tony Perkis until I arrived in North Carolina. And I think we were like literally checking into the Holiday Inn and ran into either Judd or the director, Stephen Brill,
Yeah.
who I had met in the auditions and chatted a little bit. And I had been very curious who was going to play that role. And he was like, oh, it's Ben Stiller. And I had seen a little of the Ben Stiller show, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like maybe I had seen Reality Bites, but I was like, no way. Or I probably hadn't seen Reality Bites, but I was aware of it.
Yeah.
And so that was very exciting to me. And I don't think I really had much context for Jerry Stiller and Ann Mira.
I'm sure not.
Like maybe I did though, because Seinfeld had been on.
Yeah, that's true.
I probably was aware, but Jeffrey Tambor I was aware of. But there are other actors like Leah Lale, who played Nurse Julie. I wasn't like familiar with her before, but she was like a real sweetheart, and she is a now she's like quite a successful real estate agent in Los Angeles.
I saw
Oh,
that.
really?
Yeah.
She actually became my like parents' real estate agent.
Wow.
No way.
Inception.
Yeah. And so, those sort of relationships continue. And certainly there are other relationships that, fall by the wayside. I saw Aaron Schwartz a few years ago.
Oh, wow.
Oh, nice.
Keenan did my mom a solid for like a fundraiser for an organization she was working with a couple years ago.
That's great.
Participating in some, like a virtual, like kind of COVID era Zoom sort of event, like with different people doing things. And so I emailed with him a couple of years ago.
That's great.
And Stiller I ran into at a concert when I was in high school, and we had a good chat.
Wow.
It was I believe Phantom Planet was opening for Sloan at the Troubadour.
That's a concert.
I was hanging at the bar at the Troubadour, and I think he was buddies with Jason Schwartzman, so that he was there for that. And of course, he walked in. I was like, "Are you here to see Sloan?" And he was like, "I don't really, I don't know Sloan. No one knows Sloan."
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, and Judd I've run into a couple times. I ran into Judd on the street at Sundance.
Wow.
Like maybe
Come on.
eight years ago. One of his daughters was in a movie, and he was kind of there as a parent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had edited something. So we chatted on the street for a second. And Steve Brill, the director, I've run into a handful of times at various functions. LA is small.
Sure.
It's big, but it's small.
Yeah, exactly.
The industry is small. And Peter Berg, has a cameo in the movie.
Some big directors who were just in the movie.
I know.
Like
that's
part
the
of the
crazy
movie.
thing.
Yeah.
Like, this cast is just loaded.
And Stiller didn't, Stiller actually was kind of method with it.
That was an exact question we had.
We said, is he Daniel Day-Lewis mode, or what are we thinking?
Well, obviously he had been training, I think Reality Bites is like a year earlier, and he physically looks completely different.
He's jacked.
He had been training a lot, and he like waxed his body.
It shows
he's a hairy
too.
guy. Yeah, right. And I think I would say of all the adults in the film, he hung out with the kids the least. He wasn't staying at the Holiday Inn. He had his own thing going on.
Typical
I believe
Ben.
at the time he was with the actress Jean Triplehorn, so she was there with him. But yeah, nothing bad to say about him, but he didn't hang hard. Like all of the counselors really hung hard.
Yeah.
Paul Feig hung hard. Oh, I ran into Paul Feig a few years ago, and he was a sweetheart.
He seems like it. Tim.
Yeah,
well,
Tim.
He has to be.
Yeah. And who really hung hard, but was a curmudgeon, but that was just his persona, was Alan Covert, who played Kenny the cameraman.
Oh, yeah, sure.
who, is like in a bunch of
Yeah, he's Adam
Sandler's
Sandler's
Yeah.
go-to guy. Yeah, exactly.
Grandma's
Yeah,
boy.
yeah, exactly. Covert was really a hilarious character. He was a chain smoker. He loved Rage Against the Machine, and like if you were lucky, you got to kind of like hang in his trailer. But there were running jokes about him smoking, and the kids we would be annoying and cloying because that's like what we were there
Sure.
to do.
Yeah.
And I remember there were some bits, you would say to Covert, you'd go, secondhand smoke causes cancer. And he would say, then get away from me or die. And the other related bit was, half of the smoke from that cigarette is going to go into my lungs. And he would say, then you owe me half a pack.
That seems fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember that. I remember he actually coordinated signed Adam Sandler photos for all the kids, which was very exciting.
Incredible.
I remember that Billy Madison was like on the on-ramp to get made. And
Wow.
I remember Leah, who played Nurse Julie, taped her audition to play Veronica Vaughn.
No way.
And like was shot and directed by the crew of
Cool.
Heavyweights, but she didn't get the role.
Yeah.
And I remember Covert was supposed to play, I think, the Norm Macdonald role or the other friend.
Yeah.
Like, and it was like meant to be a shoe-in. It was who Sandler wanted, but the studio like pushed back, and he ended up not playing that role.
Wow.
I remember he was frustrated about that.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Some inside baseball stuff about
Yeah.
that. I was wrong. We didn't get signed Sandler photos. We got signed Jim Carrey photos.
Wow.
Even
which
better
was-
at the time, though.
That was
wild.
better. But there is a Sandler Heavyweight story, and this is cool. I was visiting my dad at work on the Sony lot, and he was editing a little movie called Hollow Man. I don't know if you're familiar.
Kevin Bacon.
Kevin Bacon.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also Paul Verhoeven, who made Starship Troopers and Showgirls. And my dad, I'm in his editing room, and he tells me, Sandler's production company offices are right above mine. And there were a couple producers from Heavyweights who work with Sandler, and they're all up there. I ran into this guy, Jack, who was like one of the producers, and I ran into Steve Brill, the director of Heavyweights.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but we somehow worked out a thing where I was going to go upstairs into their offices. I was like, I either just walked in alone or someone. I think maybe this guy, Jack Garaputo, like we coordinated with him. He was like, let me bring you up and let's see if Steve Brill recognizes you.
Yeah.
So he brings me up into Adam Sandler's office, and Steve Brill and Adam Sandler and a couple other people are in there. And he's like, hey, I ran into this guy. Anyone know this guy? And the director, Steve Brill, is looking at me, and he's like, who is that? And Sandler goes, that's one of the kids from Heavyweights.
That is
Wow,
great.
well done.
Bad Sandler impression. He was
That's good.
he was wearing a shirt of the band Styx, which I
Wow.
remember.
He is so on brand.
He really is. Anyway, so that was a cool moment.
Yes.
I was to answer your much earlier question of being recognized or whatever. I was recognized by Adam Sandler many years later.
I mean, that's like the peak.
Yeah. I've also heard that Paul Thomas Anderson is a huge Heavyweights fan.
That is one of the fun facts. I was like, okay, that's incredible. Like, just more and more excellent facts.
Right.
That's a good fun fact.
Yeah. And that one of the ones I remember we touched on was that Judd Apatow used his working on the movie to hit on his wife, or as they were dating. He was like, well, I was like, that's a great swing.
Like, that's a power move right there.
Wow. Yeah.
As long as it's not ladybugs, then I think that'll work. I think that's a good move.
Yeah, totally. Not why my wife is with me, my involvement in Heavyweights, but
Are you? But you don't know for sure.
I don't know for sure. I guess it's just a bonus.
So are you aware of kind of like the cult following now? Because like we don't know anyone our age that has not seen the movie.
Or doesn't quote it.
Right. But like you said, like in the moment, maybe it wasn't as big as you expected. But now, I mean, everyone refers to it so fondly. Like that's entrenched in our childhood. And even now, watching it again as an adult, like, yeah, this totally holds up. I remember so much of it. It's so good. So like, Was there a moment where you're like, you know what, this kind of had some staying power, even though maybe it didn't do as well as you thought it could do initially?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'll say is when I look at there's like one main heavyweights meme account on Instagram that I follow, and whenever they post something, the comments are littered with dozens of people all quoting a different line from the movie.
Yes.
Everyone's got
Yeah.
their favorite line, right?
Yeah.
And you can just scroll through that and see how many different things people respond to, or um, the lines of dialogue that stick with people, and you can kind of see how broad the appeal is from that sort of thing for me. Um, that there are a dedicated amount of people who just love the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's funny is that we were talking about this a little bit ago, is that Jim used to be a YMCA counselor, and they used the buddy system, like things like that, where it's like it wasn't just even like quote, it was like actually like just buried into
And I
parts.
think at the moment you thought that was hilarious. I'm like, yeah, we did that. Like we would just yell buddy. And I mean, it wasn't as exaggerated, but it's like not far off.
Yeah.
Like that. Okay.
Right.
That checks out.
Right. And then the kids are looking out for themselves and you don't have to pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It works. Well, I obviously did it for the podcast, and then I rewatched it recently just to even buff up on it again. But one of the things, and I was just curious for like even your knowledge of being in it or after the fact. There's the one kid, I think his name is Cody, one of the kids who constantly is having a nosebleed in the movie. Do you know were there parts of this movie that like got filmed? Well, I'm sure there had to be that like, or plots or anything that got cut, or like that you remember like, oh, I had a whole story where we did this and it just didn't end up making the final.
The Cody nosebleed thing, I think, was just a detail in the script. Ironically, as a kid, I got nosebleeds all the time, but that wasn't my character. Interestingly, though, if you look, Cody is the character's name, but also the actor was named Cody Berger.
Perfect.
And
Yeah.
that was an instance where I think there were scripted like whatever 6, 7, 8 main kids, and in the audition process, they liked Cody, they liked his energy and look, but they didn't have a character for him, and so they kind of
Gotcha.
Okay.
they would take some lines from some character that weren't like, oh, Josh has to say that,
Right.
or Roy has to say that, and they would spread them around, spread the love, spread them around a little bit. But in terms of things that were left on the cutting room floor, a lot of them are on the Blu-ray release that came
Excellent.
out a handful of years ago. Judd Apatow loves to throw deleted scenes and bonus content on his physical media releases,
Right.
and that one has some great deleted scenes. For me, the funniest was there's a scene where Tony stages a production of Cats starring the kids, and we're
That's
all in these
incredible.
like skin tight cat suits. That was totally insane that they
Yeah.
cut out. I believe that's on the Blu-ray.
That's
delivery.
Oh
great.
man.
This stuff might be on YouTube.
Yeah.
Probably is. I know there was other stuff. There were longer versions of
Yeah.
things. There was a much longer version of Tony has this kind of insane speech at a bonfire where and I remember as scripted, it was so long and he improvised, and
Yeah.
there was stuff that directed at Jerry Garner about your domineering father that they cut out. I don't know why that always stuck with me. Probably because I had never heard the word domineering before. Yeah, there are other deleted scenes. I'm drawing a little blank. I know. Oh yeah. There's a scene where they raid the bunk and find the candy that the
Right.
kids are
Yeah.
hiding kind of early on, and there's a moment where Tony grabs from, I think, like out of the sock of Kenan Thompson's character, like a Pez dispenser, and
Yes.
Yep.
empties it out. And
Yeah, like shells.
the sound effects, right, are like very metallic and
Yeah.
heavy, like looks like my man's packing, he says. Well, there was more to that scene. There was a beat where he then goes to me in the lineup of kids, and I don't remember the exact line, but basically he sees I have a bulge in my crotch. And says something to the effect
Yeah.
of like, what's that bulge, or and he's like, and he has me unzip my pants and I pull out like a Twix or Three Musketeers or something. But I don't know if that is on the Blu-ray. It might be, but I distinctly remember not just me, but both of us, because he was really in my face, were breaking character and cracking up because it was so absurd. And maybe we were around the same height as memories. Maybe around the same height. Yeah, and there's a period of the film. There's a sequence where they sneak into Tony's house.
Yeah.
And I'm not in that sequence because it sets up right after that. They find me on the toilet eating a burger.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which kind of sets into motion the montage set to "I Want Candy" by Bow Wow Wow, right?
In every 90s kids movie.
Oh yeah, every single movie.
There was actually now that my memory is jogged in Heavyweights. You may wonder, why does Philip not have an event at the Apache Relay at the end?
Oh, sure, yeah.
And as scripted, Philip was a bit more right. They're all fat kids, so Philip was like the nerd, or him and the British kid. Were
Yep.
Nicholas.
And so Philip had a little subplot about the scene where they're waiting for the bus at the beginning, and there's a little bit of catching up happening between the kids. How was your year? Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a line about how I had finally beaten Prince of Persia, the video game. And there was something else later with video games. And in the Apache Relay, there was a whole scene that was filmed. I'm not sure if this is on the Blu-ray, where I compete against a camp MVP kid it was like an AV club relay, basically. It was a relay race within the relay race where you have to take an overhead projector on a cart and navigate it through some obstacles. And then, or maybe it was then I had to thread up a film projector, a 16 millimeter projector.
Oh, wow.
This is a two-part question. Were there any downsides or struggles of filming the movie? And why was it you licking your hand after swiping chocolate off of Nicholas's bare stomach?
I think that was
that's method. You committed to that part.
Yeah, that was one line that they didn't give to Cody, right? That was a line that they deemed vital to Philip's character.
Yeah, this is Philip through and through.
Yeah, this is definitely not sanitary. So, and the first question was setbacks. Yeah, there was not for me necessarily, but the amazing food orgy sequence.
Yes.
That's our next question. You were seriously picking off all of our questions. Exactly.
Well, maybe you know about this. I think this is on IMDb, that the main kid, Aaron Schwartz, who plays Jerry, during that sequence, he slipped on some food or something and broke or fractured something in his arm.
No.
And they took him off to the hospital. We continued to film the sequence, and they had his stand-in who looked a lot like him, and they smothered his face with
movie magic.
Sneaky.
Yeah, chocolate marshmallow stuff. And there are a few shots in the film where I know you can look at it in that sequence, it's clearly not him. But
really,
they looked enough alike, and it was all food that people were none the wiser.
Yeah.
And then Aaron came back to set with a cast or an air cast or something, and so despite the fact that it takes place in the summer, they basically had him in long sleeve shirts for a number of scenes. So next time you watch it, watch for long sleeve shirts on Jerry Garner.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing. And then there was also some of the adults snuck onto the Blob one night.
I
know that it was the director and maybe the director of photography and someone else really hurt themselves. It was the actor Tom McGowan, who played Pat, was involved.
Wow.
And if you listen to the strange song, rap song that plays during the end credits that has the kids singing or rapping.
We talked about that. Yeah.
So those were none of the actual kids in the movie. They just got other
broke
random
my heart.
Come on.
My heart's broken.
But it was Tim and Pat, actually.
Okay.
And there's a throwaway line in that about going on the Blob and hurting your whatever part of your body that he actually hurt.
That's incredible.
The one other thing was that there was one kid who is in a little less of the film than you might think. Like I think at a certain point they're just not present for maybe the end of the film. And this person, I won't name who it is, but this actor was like a tagger, was like
oh no way.
and tagged on someone's property, and basically everyone knew the kid's tag because this kid was always tagging. And so this kid was kind of like at a certain point dismissed and ends up not in as much of the movie as they maybe were scripted to be.
Oof, what a mistake.
When we were filming Bushwhacked, I was like a year older and was starting to get into alternative rock.
Yeah.
And the big stuff that the kids of Bushwhacked were listening to, or at least that I was listening to, were the Downward Spiral.
Wow. Sure.
The Blue Album by Weezer.
Yeah.
Purple by Stone Temple Pilots.
Sure.
And I remember somewhere in some town or some record store near the Bushwhacked locations in the Sierra Nevada, Lake Tahoe area, I bought my first vinyl record, which was Purple, which I still have.
Excellent. That's a good one to start with.
Yeah, and Whip Smart by Liz Phair, Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Reference.
And you're going right into Bushwhacked, which, I just wanted to at least poke at a little bit. So you got that movie stars Daniel Stern. I mean, of Home Alone fame and all these other, the Wonder Years. He's right. He's got a career himself.
He was prominent.
I was gonna say, do you have any memories of that? Just being, do you feel starstruck around him when you're going to that movie? Any stories?
I did from Home Alone. Obviously was huge, and this was his star vehicle, really.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think both that movie and Heavyweight suffered from a similar thing of like, you have a big name in this sort of lead role, but you also have a group of kids. And is it a kids movie, or is it a Ben Stiller movie, or is it a Daniel Stern movie? And in the edit of the film, it shifts a little bit in one way or the other. You may know that Ben Stiller his name isn't on the poster of Heavyweights. His picture is not on the poster of Heavyweights, at least the original one.
Yeah.
We were holding up
the hot dog.
Yeah.
Lars in the hot dog. I think later on the Blu-ray, it is Ben Stiller that we're holding up.
I see.
I think he had a thing of like, this was going to be a starring vehicle for me. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think he distanced himself from the film a little bit upon release. Daniel Stern, obviously, it was his starring vehicle. And after Home Alone, he had a development deal with Fox, and this was going to be his like big thing. And there's some rumors on the internet that it was originally developed as a sort of spin-off of Home Alone, and he was going to play Marv again in a different scenario.
Yeah.
The characters are so similar,
right?
And it was a new group of kids, kind of his adversaries, right? But that was never really confirmed. But Bushwhacked was originally written by the Farrelly brothers.
Oh wow,
really?
And I think because it was not so good, they like took their names off. They used pseudonyms. So the screenplay is credited to 4 people. 2 of the 4 are pseudonyms, and the other 2 were a writing team who like rewrote the movie. But I was I don't know if starstruck is the word, but it was great fun to hang with Daniel Stern.
Yeah.
He had a kid or kids who were close in age to the kids in the movie, and those kids came to the locations, and he was very warm towards the kids. One of Daniel Stern's kids now is in local politics in Los Angeles.
Wow. Really?
Pretty progressive guy. But that film also had an amazing adult ensemble. Like I would say Bushwhacked, the child acting, it's not great, myself included, on the whole. But they supported the kids with an amazing ensemble of really cool people.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got Daniel Stern. You have a very young Ann Dowd, the great character actor who's on,
Leftovers. She's in a bunch of stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Tons of stuff. You have John Polito, who is in a lot of Coen Brothers movies.
Yeah.
And was in The Crow, which I think I was stoked about.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bushwhacked is not a great movie. It
has, I can't wait. I'm going to get my hands on it at some point.
Like it's got this harmonica musical score. Like
Do you
when
not like
something's
those?
supposed to be funny that maybe isn't that funny, like suddenly the harmonica comes in.
Now we know it's funny.
Yeah, exactly. Just in case you weren't laughing. But it was a fun experience, a good group of people, beautiful scenery. We were up in, the Sierra Nevadas. We shot some around Donner Pass, where like the Donner Party was.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And there were all these rapids, like rapid swimming in whitewater rapids scenes
Yeah.
that we had to like train for, and we like trained with these rock climbing experts to do that stuff, and it was a real adventure.
Well, this has been awesome. We really appreciate your time.
Thank
Max,
you so much.
diving into all
Thank you.
all your stories has been great. And like you said, once we find a copy of Bushwhacked, we're doing it on the podcast.
We'll circle back.
We're checking in with you.
Yeah. I'll just say briefly, you would ask me if I have anything I need to plug.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I spend my days as an editor of film
Yes.
and internet stuff, and no television. But
Yeah, so you did short for Olivia Rodrigo for her new album. That's awesome.
yeah, I work with a production company that does some work for her record label. So we did a bunch of Olivia Rodrigo things on her last couple albums, and I edited on Disney Plus actually I think it's like a half hour or 45-minute behind the scenes documentary about the making of a Billie Eilish concert film at the Hollywood
Awesome.
Bowl that I was excited to edit. And
Yeah.
I've edited some small independent films. I have one that is going to premiere at a film festival coming up in the coming months that I'm really excited about. It's a movie called Sacramento, and it stars Michael Cera,
Excellent.
Kristen Stewart, and Maya Erskine from Pen 15.
Wow.
And is co-written, directed by, and co-starring a great actor named Michael Angarano, who you may know as the star of Sky High. And he played the young version of the main character in Almost Famous.
Yeah.
A movie I tried out for, didn't get the role. The role that Jay Baruchel
Yes.
played.
Yeah.
Baruchel, I never know how to pronounce it.
Sure.
Tiny role. But my good friend Michael Angarano, it's his new film, and it's a comedy, an emotional comedy, a dramedy with laughs.
Yes.
And a great cast, and hopefully you'll see that movie soon. Hopefully it'll play all over the place or on streaming or something by the end of the year or next year.
Awesome.
So I did have something to plug.
Excellent.
Good.
And that's how I spend my time, is staring at this computer screen and this bigger monitor, editing things. And I have a nearly 2-year-old child who
Congrats.
I'm excited to one day, thank you, show Heavyweights to.
Well, I don't want to cut you off because we're winding down, but we just want to thank you again for your time. This was great.
So nice to meet you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
So fun. Yeah. Good.
And like I said, once we
times.
find our copy of Bushwhacked, we're calling you back.
Enjoy your evening, guys.
All right.
well.
You
Appreciate
too. Take it easy.
Thank you for listening. Please follow, rate, review, like, and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Tune in next season when we review more cinematic masterpieces from our childhood. Until then.